Hey, y'all, welcome back to the podcast solo episode today. And this one, hopefully, will be interesting to a few of you, especially maybe my longtime listeners, perhaps to those of you who are new to the podcast over the last little while. So, this podcast has been going on for about 3.5 years, and I don't think I've done a very good job kind of telling you who I am and why I do what I do. I think a lot of people know, but I also feel like lately I've had a few of my very good clients actually tell me that they didn't know certain things about me. So I think it's probably helpful. And obviously this podcast will be coming out near my 42nd birthday. So I think this is the week that I just turned 42 that we'll be releasing this podcast. So I thought no better time than now to kind of do a personal one. And hopefully, this podcast lets you know a little bit more about me. I'm always interested in people that I listen to, like their personal podcast, their solo podcast. It's so funny because I think we as podcast hosts sometimes think that our guests are the reason why people listen to podcasts. But I think sometimes, our real ride or dies, the people who listen to the podcast week in and week out, they actually want to hear more from us. So it's kind of like a trippy thing to think about that you actually want to know more about me. But a few of my clients were saying to me, like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that, or that's so surprising. And I'll always remember one of my good former clients, she always said to me, and I know that this is true, is that like people have preconceived notions about you based upon like what you do and where you live and how you look and all of those things. And sometimes I think it's just so crazy because the reality behind what your preconceived notion is like sometimes so different. And so maybe today we're just going to bust a few of the preconceived notions about me. Maybe you'll get to learn more about me, but also too, this podcast is really to help you. So I'm hoping that in listening to this podcast, you feel a little bit more seen, perhaps a little bit more heard. Maybe it helps you know a little bit more about me and why I am so passionate about helping people and why I am so passionate about helping people decide it's their turn or overcome the mindset or, really get clear on a good strategy to achieve your goals and hit the things that you want to hit in this life because life is so, so short. And I know that for myself personally, hopefully you'll hear a little bit of those things today that there were these pivotal moments in my life where I really had to make some changes and I'm still making those changes. Obviously I'm a coach. I help, hundreds of people. I only work with 30 clients at a time. And, my clients know I am far from perfect. I don't have all my shit together and I don't think I have to be in order to be a really fantastic coach. I think my job is to help other people. My job is to give them the space, give them the clarity, hold them in it, call out, the blocks that they may not see. Really ultimately, I think that is my job and I think I'm really good at it, but I think it'll be helpful for you to hear a few of the things that I have dealt with in my life. I have some questions. I submitted on my Instagram. I put a little question box up saying, "Is there anything that you want to know about me personally?" So I have a list of those things on my phone that I'm probably going to refer to, but I do think that it's always helpful to know a little bit more about a person and to get a little bit more of a backstory. Like I was saying, one of my good clients, she had a very big preconceived notion about me when she first found me on the internet. And, she thought I was just this pretty blonde girl who's come from money, just acting like her life is so perfect. And until she actually found out that number one, I had so many insecurities. Number two, I 100% did not come from money. Number three, I actually am not doing this, to pump myself up. I'm doing this because I really truly do believe it's my soul's calling it because it saved my life. So for those of you who don't really know a lot about my story, I'm going to try to, talk about a few bits and pieces today and kind of give you a background on me and why I am so passionate about what I do and why I show up week in and week out on my social medias and on this podcast to try to help you decide it's your turn. So kind of going back a little bit. So I was originally born in Edmonton, Canada, or not originally born. I was born in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. I am a Canadian by birth, an American by choice now. I have been an American citizen now for over 10 years. It's one of the greatest blessings of my life. I'm just so grateful to be an American. I think that America is, for those who don't believe it, America is truly one of these places in the world where you truly have all the opportunities in the world. We are far from perfect, but there is not another place on the planet that I think that you have the freedoms and the abilities to actually decide it's your turn and create a life that you actually want to create. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about, America. And I'm so passionate about keeping our freedoms and keeping our borders safe and keeping our economy and doing all the things that we as Americans really should be so proud of, because for me, it has given me the opportunity to create a life that I really wanted to create. So, grew up in Edmonton, Canada, had a very normal life. Parents have been married forever, two brothers. I grew up kind of not having a ton of confidence. I grew up always a workhorse. I knew that I wanted certain things that, my family couldn't really provide. So I've always started, like, I was always working. And I've always had a great work ethic. I've always known that if I want something, I have the ability to go after it and get it. And I've always had that competitive drive in me. I've always had that, like, I knew for a fact I was so not confident in who I was. I was not confident as a child. I wasn't confident as a teenager. I was always, like, so concerned with how I looked and, always thinking that other things outside of me were gonna make me happy, but I always knew that if I wanted something, I could work hard to get it, because I knew that I wasn't gonna be given anything. Like, my parents were great. They tried to give me the best life that they could provide, but I always knew if I wanted more, because I always knew I wanted more. I think one of the greatest things that happened to me was, from a young kid, I grew up around, I have a golf background, so I grew up around private country clubs. My dad was a golf professional, so my dad worked at the golf course, but I was around the people who were members at country clubs, and those are people who have extra sources of income to be able to be in these country clubs and pay the monthly subscriptions and do all the things. We all know what it's like to be a member at a club, and I grew up around some really nice clubs. I was always working at them, but I always knew that there was people around me who had more than I did. And for me, I still say to this day that it has given me proof of what is possible. Even still to this day, I have, way more now than I've ever had, obviously, like, you're older and all the things, but even still to this day, I love being around people who have so much, because I feel like, to me, it's proof of what is possible. I remember I told a story to a friend or a client or something like that, when I was in Las Vegas a few months back for Super Bowl. Remember I saw a man lose about $100,000 in one spin of the roulette wheel, and as insane as that is, I also think it's like, see, it's proof that person literally lost $100,000 in, like, 4 minutes and didn't even blink. So that type of wealth is out there. It's possible. I'm around it. I see it. I know it's there. And even as a young person, I started working when I was like 13 years old. 14 years old. I remember I bought my first car before I turned 14 to even have my learner's permit. Like, I bought that car. It was a Chevy Tracker. It was blue. I had cow cover seats. Like, it was gross, but I remember buying that car by myself because I was like, I want freedom. I want to have that. I knew what I wanted, and I've always set myself up to be able to accomplish anything that I say I want to accomplish. So on the one side of the coin, I was very confident and I wanted a great life and I knew that it was possible. And yet on the other side of the coin, I did not have the confidence in myself. I didn't feel worthy. I never felt good enough. And I think that that was a kind of a double-sided coin, in the fact that, like, I was around, success. I was around that and I didn't have it for myself. And I always thought that it came from something outside of yourself. It always came from, like, money or looks or status or whatever. And obviously, I was, like, in my teens and I was young, and a lot of teenagers feel this way. But for me, it really turned into, really self-deprecation. For me, it turned into an eating disorder. I always did not like myself, because I was always looking for something outside of myself to be happy. Like when I lose the weight, when I make the money, I'll be happy. And that was never true. And, kind of fast forward a little bit, I got a golf scholarship. I got really good at golf really quickly. But again, it was like I was never feeling good enough, even in the golf, to get a golf scholarship. So I got a golf scholarship. Like I had literally been playing golf for like 3 years. I grew up around golf. I never really wanted to play it. When I finally started to play it, I got good quickly, and I got offered a golf scholarship to come here to the United States. And I, again, in that moment, I never felt good enough because I was just making it. Like I was just good enough. I hadn't been playing golf. Like when I came to college, most people who were in college had been playing golf since they were 6 years old. I didn't touch a golf club until I was 18, came to college at 21, almost 22. And so I only had 3 years of experience. So I never felt good enough. Like I was good enough to get here, but in my brain, I was never good enough. And I always felt like I was never good enough. So come to college, I'm literally trying to prove myself. Like when I win, I'll be happy. When I, all American, I'll be happy. When I get on tour, I'll be happy. When I get on, television, I'll be happy. When I make money, I'll be happy. It was just always outside of myself. I was always willing to work, but I never felt good enough. And it was like this really weird thing with inside of myself, is that I was always trying to hit that next level in hopes to be happy. And I was willing to do the work, but I was actually never achieving happiness. It was always like, I always did not like myself. I always felt horrible about myself. I just did not think I was good enough. And it was just a constant battle for me. That's when my eating disorder really started. I hated myself. The way I talked to myself was horrible. And I really, outside looking in, I did not have it that bad. I mean, I left Canada, I came to college. I was like playing like number one or number two pretty much my whole time in college. My schools was paid for. I had enough, extra money that I had, because I had been working for 3 years before I came to school. I had enough extra money that like I was doing fine. Like I had good friends. I was so, like, now looking back, how blessed was I that I was able to play college golf in the States. I was traveling. I was literally living this greatest life. Like now knowing what I do know about the power of the mind and gratitude and being so grateful for where you're at, but I had no fucking concept of that. Like I had no mindset concept. I had no knowledge that you had the power to change your life, that you had the power to like basically create your destiny. And I was just existing. And I say this in hopes that like someone out there is hearing that, like, if you are existing in this world and just coasting and like just getting by, oh my God, I know the pain of that. Like I was fucking miserable. I had graduated college, I was playing pro golf, I was making money. I had the same boyfriend, now husband, I had then, but I was just so unhappy to my core. I did not have a why. I did not have a purpose. I always thought the next thing was going to make me happy. And I pretty much looked the same then, a lot less wrinkles. I was financially fine. Like I wasn't in great shape, but I was financially fine. I had a horrible money mindset because that's the way I grew up. And there's no, I'm not throwing my parents down the bus. It's just that that's the way my parents grew up. They didn't know. And my parents didn't know all of the things that I now know. And I didn't know those things. I wasn't taught those things. I wasn't educating myself. I wasn't around the right people. I was just coasting in life. And fast forward, I had gotten television shows, I was modeling, I was making money, I was with my current husband. And I had this moment in my life when I was like 27 years old. I had failed, quote unquote, failed going to LPGA Q school for 3 years in a row. Newsflash, I was definitely not the best golfer. I'm still not the best golfer. I have a horrible golf swing, but I was so mentally mean to myself back when I was trying to play pro golf because I was always just the way I operated back then was, if I was mean to myself, it would allow me to never get comfortable. That's what I always thought. That's what I was shown. I was shown that if you're mean to yourself, it'll continue to propel you to get better. And I didn't know there was a different way. I didn't know that like actually being grateful and nice to yourself and kind to yourself and just being so happy with yourself will allow you to get more. I just always thought that you had to be mean, you had to suffer, you had to hate yourself, because if you did that, you would never get complacent and you would continue to grow. Well, that does work to some extent, but it's fucking miserable. And I am like literally, 101 looking at that. Like that's just the way that I operated. And, in my first 27 years of life, I was just operating out of lack, out of scarcity, out of having no idea that I actually had the power to decide it was my turn. I actually had the power to change my life. I actually had the power to change the way that you think changes your results. And I literally remember I was 27 years old. I had just failed getting my tour card for like the third year in the row. I thought my life was over. I remember I was in uh, like an apartment or an Airbnb in Florida after I had just failed for the third time in a row, third year in a row. And I was miserable. Like, there were times where I thought about taking my own life. Like, I never did it, but I thought about it. It makes my voice quiver to even say those things because I was so unhappy. I was so unfulfilled. I was so striving for something. It was never good enough. No matter what, it was never good enough. And I literally have great parents. I had a great partner. Like, I had a great life. And I was just so unhappy. I was just so unhappy. And in that moment, I feel like it was like that 3 to 4 month period, it was like I remember failing at tour school. I remember coming home and like ironing in the middle of the day. And the girl who was around success her whole life growing up around those private country clubs was like, how in the world did this happen? I knew that I was smart. I knew that I had been given, this gift of, I was somewhat educated. I was somewhat good looking. I was somewhat smart. I was somewhat talented. And yet I was not appreciative of any of those things. I was always thinking that there was going to be something else, or when certain thing happened, I would be happy, or, I would be okay. And it was like I had this like couple month period where it was like something has to change. And if it doesn't, this is miserable and I don't want to do this anymore. And I knew whether it was end my life or I was going to lose the things that I actually did have, including my now husband and friendships and opportunities and just life in general. Like, I did not want to exist that way anymore. There was a lot of good moments in my life. There was happy pockets in my life, but overall, that like peace within my soul of like, I am good. I never felt that ever. I never felt that. And now saying that, like, what is it? Almost, what is that? Six, like 16 years later, 15, 16 years later, now saying that, knowing that like I still have shit today, but overall, nothing actually has to change because I know I'm good and I know I have a great life. But in this 16 years it's taken to get to this point, there's been so many things that have to be done. But I think I'm telling you this to tell you that like I was at that spot. I was at that spot that was so dark and so shitty and so miserable. And I can't believe I wasted that much time. And so if you're listening to this at 57 instead of 27, please know it is still worth it. It doesn't matter if you're 17 or 67, there's still time. But if you are at that point where maybe it wasn't even that bad, God, I hope it's not that bad. But like if you are at a position in your life where you're just coasting, where it isn't very good, where you're kind of unhappy most of the time, where you have good moments, but like those moments are so few and far between, please, for the love of God, hear me when I tell you it can be better and it should be better, and you have an obligation to make it better. I wish I knew back when I was 27 that Christina, God has given you this life, and your job is to live it fully. And your job is to literally be so abundant that it blesses so many other people in whatever gift you have on the planet. And for me, that's what it was. I was like literally just fucking so in my own head. I always thought that it was going to be like some magical moment that fucking happened where I, you know, got my tour card or made all this money or had this fame or whatever the fuck it is. And none of that is fucking true. It is all an inside job that you actually have the power to change your thoughts, which then change your habits, which then change your stories, which then change your reality. And like, I know I just like spelt those things off. It takes work. It really does. It takes work, but it's like the greatest work on the planet you'll ever do. The other day, I have a client, I've been working with her for maybe 8 or 9 months, and she's like, "Christina, I just want you to know that, like, had I been going through this situation right now with, like, a stressful time she brought on a new baby, a stressful time with her job, her husband's transitioning a little bit at work, like, moving, it's just, like, a lot of things." She said, "Christina, had I not been working with you to really reprogram my mindset, reprogram what I believe to be true, this would have been an extremely hard season, and now I'm sitting in this hard, quote unquote, hard season, and I'm the happiest I've ever been. My marriage is at the best part it's ever been. Like, I'm so fucking grateful, and, like, her actual situation was probably financially better in before. It's going to get better now, but it was probably better before, and yet she's the most happy and content that she's probably ever been. And I use her as proof, myself as proof, telling you that it is fucking possible. It does take work. So, kind of going back when I was like 27, I was at that rock bottom moment. And I said to myself, I was like, Christina, you have to change. Like, something has to change or this will not end well. And in that moment, did not come from faith. I did not come from a religious background or a faith background. I just didn't know. When I was a kid, we said our prayers. To me, it was like a recital that you just said. There was no feeling behind it. And so I remember just like being like, all right, God, if there's something out there, I need help because I can't do this anymore. And I remember kind of like getting to that point that I was like, I have to do something different. And for me, it started with like asking for help. God, source, universe, doorknob, I don't know what it was, but I started just like listening to things that were making me feel good. And in the beginning, it was like Joel Osteen podcasts, it was Joyce Meyer's podcast, it was like Rick Warren stuff. And it wasn't even podcasts back in the day, guys. It was like fucking YouTube videos or like, I don't even know where the fuck I found it. I'm sure it was like YouTube back in the day. And then I started like reading books, but I also started getting around the right people. Like I started like just figuring out like who is happy, who is positive, how are they fucking doing it? And I didn't know then about mentorship and coaching and masterminds and putting yourselves in these rooms and paying to get a part of these like paying to be around people who like thought differently and all of these things, but like I slowly started to do it. And the very first, I think it was the first podcast I think I started listening to was the School of Greatness, Lewis Howe's School of Greatness. And I remember starting to listening to like these stories about people like overcoming the people, positive thinking, people like into self-development. And I was just like, this is really interesting. And the more that I started to listen to that, it was like I was eliminating more, like it was like almost like I took 90% of the shit that I was thinking all day, every day was like fucking horrible. And I started like adding more good things. And then some of the bad things would go away, and then the good things, and then the bad things. And slowly but surely, and this was like probably a couple years, guys, where I just like literally became obsessed with like what I was thinking and positive affirmations. And like I still, even today, like I have a client right now. Every single day, she's a full-time client of mine. Every single day, I send her the word like journal or affirmation or whatever. Like, I was obsessed with reprogramming everything I thought that was no longer serving me. And like, you're going to have to do some of that shit in order to replace what you've been thinking about. Maybe you're 30 years old and maybe you have been thinking one way for forever. And the reason why, like, sometimes I don't think people understand really what I actually do to actually help people is I, as a coach, feel like the thing that I do best is like I'm the overhead perspective. I can witness you in your blind spots. I listen to you, whether this is personal or whether this is business, and I hear things that you're saying, and I almost like reflect them back to you. Like, hey, do you see that right here? You're constantly saying that, you don't have enough money for this. Well, how about we reprogram that? Because where you learned that was your parents, the people that you're around, your family. And if you no longer want that to be true, we're going to have to eliminate what you have believed to be true the most of your life. And we're going to have to put in something different. And again, like I told you, I grew up around a lot of money, even though my family didn't have it. So it was almost like I was reprogramming what I thought to be true. Because if I had only seen what my family operated in, like how my family thought, how my family acted, how my family thought about money and business and people and all of the things, I would have just believed that that was true. Well, nothing's actually fucking true. And I try to explain this sometimes, like, think about this situation. Remember when you, like, perhaps you're in a relationship or you're married, and have you ever, on the first time that you went home for Christmas, you saw how your partner's family acted at Christmas? I think this is a pretty good analogy. It's like when you were growing up, your Christmas tradition was XYZ thing. You ate XYZ thing, you opened presents at XYZ time, you did it at XYZ location. Like, this was the way that Christmas was. Period. It's like you believe that everyone fucking did Christmas this way. Well, then when you get married, you go to your husband's like family, right? And you're like, "Holy fuck, you do Christmas this way? You eat this thing, you open gifts at this day? Like, what the fuck are we doing here? Like, this isn't the way it works." But that's exactly what I'm talking about when I say that you have to reprogram the way that you think about life, relationships, business, family, parenting, whatever the fuck it is. You have the ability to kind of go against what your family has done if you want a different result. Now, I'm not saying you have to do that for everything, but there are certain situations that are probably, like, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a person who wants something different in certain aspects of your life. So if you are a person who wants something different, you are going to have to do something different, and you're going to have to reprogram certain things to get different results. And there's going to be certain situations, maybe it's relationship situations, maybe your family comes from a line where everyone gets divorced. And in order for you to not have a divorce, you're probably going to have to do things very differently. You're probably going to have to reprogram a certain things. You're probably going to have to act differently. You're probably going to have to believe differently. You're going to have to do things differently in order to get a different result. You can do the exact same thing with your positivity. You can do the exact same thing with your money. You can do the exact same thing with work. You can do the exact same thing. But that's really what you're going to have to do to get a different result. And so that's really how I started at like 27. I just started reprogramming things. I was just like, I believe this way about this thing, whether it be about money, whether it be about happiness, whether it be about the way I looked. I believed one way, and I knew that that way was not serving me. So I was like, I've got to do something else because this is fucking miserable. And there's no way in hell that I am like spending one more day feeling this fucking bad because I hated myself and I was fucking miserable. So I had to do something different. And so I started figuring out how to find proof of something else that was different. And then I was reprogramming it before it was even true. Right now, I just said I have a client who were reprogramming certain things. And I asked her the other day after a week, I was like, how does it feel? She's like, sometimes I'm just saying it. You guys, there were certain things that I just said because I wanted them to be true so fucking bad that I was like, I am just going to continue to say this until it becomes real. And along the way, I started finding proof that it was real. So it's not like you're lying to yourself. Sometimes it feels like you are, but eventually, the more that you say it, the more that you program it, the more that you find proof that it is true, you're going to all of a sudden start finding proof that certain things are true. Like money is an easy example that I use quite a bit, but like I literally believed I couldn't fucking, and I've said this on the podcast 100 times, but like I literally looked at a menu and decided that I couldn't like add the avocado. I couldn't upgrade to the French fries. I couldn't have the steak. I had to have the chicken and all of that bullshit. Why did I do that? It wasn't actually that I didn't have money. I've actually, like I told you in the beginning of this podcast, I've been a workhorse since I was like fucking 5 years old. I used to work for my dad on the golf course. I've always had money. I've always known that I can make money. I've always been able to make money. Like it's not hard for me. But I had to reprogram all that stuff, like literally reprogram that to be true. And then every single time I told myself I couldn't have something on a menu, I literally had to stop and say, is this actually fucking true? Is this actually fucking true? And 99% of the time, guys, it wasn't true. Like there was nothing true about me not having an extra $5 on a restaurant bill. None of that is fucking true. It's just that it's the only thing I've ever known. My parents still to this day fucking do that shit. They haven't chosen to reprogram their shit. I have. They're not bad. I'm not better. But I knew that I hated acting that way. I hated living life that way. And now, whether it be money, whether it be looks, whether it be business, whether it be relationship, whatever the fuck it is, I knew that I did not want to be that person. I knew it was miserable to be that person. So I just decided that I was going to no longer let that be true. And guess what? Nothing fucking changed except for the way that I thought about it. And guess what? I will 100% tell you, I am so much fucking better now with money and so much happier with my situation because I don't think of anything like my husband and I have this like, well, he has a bigger number, but like I tell clients all the time, do you actually have $100 problem? If it's under $100, chances are you don't have a fucking problem. So don't even fucking think about it. Literally, that's an affirmation that you can take from this podcast. I don't have $100 problems. I actually don't have $1,000 problems. I fucking don't. Like if it's underneath that, I don't actually have to think about it. And like that's not like whatever. It is just fucking facts. You can judge me for that. You can not, whatever. Maybe yours is like you don't have $1,000,000 problems, but maybe yours is $100 problem. But a lot of it is the mindset. And from that mindset of like, I don't have $1,000 problems, that's the reason why I can actually make money is because I also don't really think about it that much. I actually just like, I know that I can make money. It is like a strong belief. I just having a call with a client this morning who's like, I always figure it out. He always figures it out. He always can make money. He's just always upping that temperature of how much money he can make. It used to be like when we first started working together, he was like $100,000 is all that I feel like I can make. Every time I get around that $100,000, I like self-sabotage myself. So we have been reprogramming him to make like 125,000, 150,000. Like it is possible, but it just takes work. And so like that is the shit that I had to do in the beginning of my journey at like 27 years old, where I was no longer okay being the way that I was. Like, and it has taken a ton of work. And I literally, like, I work on myself all day, every day. I'm fucking not perfect. And so I just really wanted to talk about that because I think sometimes people just like don't understand, or maybe like you didn't know that these are challenges that I faced, that I hated myself, that I had an eating disorder, that I didn't even know if I wanted to live sometimes. That like I've had these challenges. I have a lot of challenges too. Like, cause someone asked me, like, what are some of your personal challenges that you've overcome? Well, personally, those are a lot of things that I've overcome. I'm always working on myself in some form or fashion. Like I have like to me, like I know that this kind of sounds crazy because I help people with like business and personal, but like a lot of my shit that I personally have to overcome is a lot of the personal stuff. Business really isn't that hard. I actually know that I'm always gonna be able to do this business, A, because I'm really fucking good coach, B, because I actually care so deeply about my clients, and C, there's a lot of people who need support, a lot of people who are overwhelmed, stressed out, stuck, that they need to figure out how to get to that next stage. They wanna be happy, they don't wanna be overwhelmed. They don't wanna have the limiting beliefs. They wanna do the thing on the planet that they know that they're put here to do, and they're so afraid to do it, and they don't know how. Like, I'm always gonna be employed. Like, ChatGPT ain't fucking taking my job. Like, I'm so grateful that this is the career that I've chosen. But, like, a lot of my challenges are my personal challenges. I still battle with, being the person who's always taking care of my family, being the person who's always trying to be like a better version of myself. And that's hard with my family. One of my clients asked me the other day, and she said she didn't even know this about me because she's a big partier. And she's like, you need to come do a rave or a party with me or whatever. And I was like, girl, I can't stay up past 10 o'clock. And I was telling her how, that's really probably not something that I'm ever going to do. I love her to death. I think she's so fabulous and so great, but like I'm probably never going to do that. And one of the reasons why I'm probably never going to do that is because I have a hard time around drugs and alcohol and partying and all of those things. And a lot of that is because of certain aspects of my family life. One of the reasons why I do what I do and how I really overcame my eating disorder and how I overcame my limiting beliefs, and a part of the reason why I do what I do is because there's certain people in my family that I can't change, and I wanted to so badly. And I knew that I did not want to be like those people. And I knew that if I had certain things that I had to overcome, I couldn't be looking at them, telling them to overcome their shit if I wasn't willing to overcome my shit. So I think one of the reasons why I am so passionate about deciding it's your turn, about creating a life that you love, about like doing the damn thing, where I get so passionate. I think people see my passion and see my intensity as sometimes being mean. But for me, it comes from a deep seated root of like, there are certain people in my family life that I would love to change, that I'm like, "I fucking want you to change so fucking bad." And I can't change them because you can't change a person. So I think when I get to work with my clients, when I get to help clients, it's such a blessing to me because these people are paying me. These people are saying, "I want help. I want to change. I want this so badly that I will do whatever it takes." And those people are my favorite people to work with. They're not the people who are unwilling to do the work, the people who are afraid to make the investment, the people who are on the fence about like, should I do this or shouldn't I do this? These are the people that like, I know I want better. I know I want to fix this. I'm all in and I'd love your support because I know I can go faster. I know it can be a better experience. I know I can get there quicker. I know I can enjoy the ride. I know that I want a partner in this. And I think that, that's one of the reasons why I do this as well. And I was telling my client, I was like, I'm probably never going to do those things. I don't judge any of my clients for anything. I think the one of the coolest parts about my job is that I get to see people for who they are. And every one of my clients I think are really great people, but everyone comes from a different experience. Everyone comes from a different mindset. And, this person loves to party and do all the things. And for me personally, I've seen so much negative when it comes to drugs and addiction and all of that shit that like that is not for me. And that's one of the reasons why I do this is because I can't fix certain people in my life. So I'm so passionate about helping those who actually do want the help. And I just think that that's kind of interesting and perhaps helpful for you of why I get so intense about this. Perhaps you follow me on social media and some of my videos are very intense, like fucking do the thing. And I think the reason why I'm like, fucking do the thing is because for the certain people in my life that I wish I could help, I can't. And so anyone who wants the help, I'm like, oh my God, yes, I'd love to help you because I know what it's like to want to change so badly. And for me personally, it's like basically there's two people in my life I'd love to help them in their certain situations. and I can't fix them. I can only be an example. And I never want to be the person, the cat calling, what is it? The cat calling the kettle black or whatever the fuck it is. But I want to be the person who like no one can ever say that I haven't done the work. No one can ever say that I didn't make the changes. No one can ever tell me ever on the face of this planet that I wasn't willing to do what it takes. And I think that that's a big part of why I am so passionate about what I do. And so a lot of my challenges, yes, business is difficult some days, you know, it's hard to deal with like team and clients and finances and all the things, but like really for me, the hard part is the personal part. Always behind the scenes, the personal part. Business is easy compared to the personal shit of overcoming that. Someone said, like, you know, what are the strategies that have impacted my life? I think the main strategy is I took personal responsibility for my life. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I have unbelievable boundaries. I take care of myself. I don't make excuses. Um, I become the person who does the things. And I know that that kind of sounds really weird. And I remember in the beginning when I first started this, I was like, what does that even fucking mean? Becoming the person. But it's like, I am not the person who makes an excuse for why something can't be done. I am the person who will find a way to yes. I am the person who works out every day. I am the person who keeps my promises. I am the person who, you know, knock on wood, God willing, is like, if I say I'm going to do something, you bet your fucking ass I'm going to do it. Anyone can trust me because I will do what I say that I'm supposed to do. And I think that that's, you know, that is kind of what makes me good at what I say that I'm supposed to, or that makes me good at what I'm doing. And some of those are like, quote unquote, the strategies that have helped me. I seek support. I will pay anything for anyone to have support to get something done quicker, faster, better, learn from people ahead of me. Even today, there's a woman who is who's been a guest on my podcast. I've been following her for a while now, and she's very, very good at what she does. And I even sent her a message. I was like, I will work with you next year because there are certain things that I think that she could really help me with, because I always want to be better. I always want to do better for my clients. I never want I never want to give someone something that I'm not willing to do for myself. And I think that that's really helpful. I think the other thing, that a strategy that has kind of set me apart, is I'm really clear on what I want. And I talk a lot about clarity because it's hard to get something that you don't even know what you're trying to get. And clarity is huge. That's the reason why I do free clarity calls all the time. I always say, book a call with me, 501-222-3362. You can book a clarity call with me. You will walk away from that call with the one mindset or the one strategy that's holding you back. On that call, guaranteed, I will give you what I believe is the mindset or the strategy that is holding you back. And chances are you will say, yes, that is actually what has been holding me back. And maybe we'll talk about why it's holding you back. What are the fears? What are the insecurities? What are the beliefs that you have that are holding you back? And then you get to decide whether we move forward, you know, working with me as your coach, or you just go ahead and do it on your own. But I do those calls. I'm one of very few coaches that actually do free clarity calls because I want you to have the clarity, because I think it matters. I'm very clear on what I want. I'm very clear on what makes me what makes my life really good. And I have amazing boundaries to say no and to say yes to what those things are. What mistakes have I made along the way? I've made a lot of mistakes along the way. I think in the beginning, I did what a lot of people do. You know, I always get frustrated at people when, you know, not frustrated at them, you know, on the call or on my social media or anything, but I get frustrated because I'm like, oh my God, I can help you. Why in the fuck are you saying no to this? Why are you so afraid to do the thing? But I know that that was me for like 3 years. I wanted to leave golf for about 3 years before I did. I was so afraid because I was going to lose my identity in golf. I was going to lose what everyone thought was the greatest life. You know, I even did a speech a couple weeks ago where people just really want to ask me questions about golf, in particular, probably the older guys. But, you know, that's what I was known for. That's what people find exciting and fancy. If you really knew what was more exciting and fancy is I now get to do something that actually helps a person have a much better life, have a less stressful life, have a more joy-filled life, have a more financially successful life. But it's not as glitzy and glamorous as quote unquote playing professional golf. Fuck, number one, I wasn't good enough. And number two, it's fucking miserable when you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing and you're constantly stressed and worried about what people are going to think and are you going to have enough money and are you going to play good? It's fucking miserable. And yet I was sticking with it because I thought that that was what was going to make me happy, what was going to make me successful. I am fucking a billion times happier and much more financially successful doing this than I was playing golf. But it did take, it took longer than it probably should have. So that is the mistake that I made. I did not realize that time is your most valuable asset. I didn't ask for help right off the bat. I was afraid to invest in myself. Sometimes to work with me, you can work with me for as little as $500 a month. And I know to some people that might sound like a lot, but to fast forward your life in a 1 year time period for $500 a month, you'd be literally crazy not to do that because time is your biggest asset. And once you go all in, I always say to clients, like once a client signs up with me on like our very first call, I say, do you feel different saying yes to this before they've even paid me for $1 before our first session? And 90% of people do say they feel different because they become the person who says, I am going to do something, who says, I am going to go all in on this. I am going to invest in myself. When you do that, something changes inside of you. And it has nothing to do with me, even to that point. It has to do with you becoming the version of yourself to say, I am no longer okay with where I'm at and I want to get better. I'm okay with where I'm at, but I want great. I had a client sign up with me like a couple of years ago and she said, Christina, I'm in a really good spot, but I don't want to just be good. I want to be great. And we worked together for like a year and she went from good to great because she was the type of person who decided that like, I'm doing this. This is what I'm going to do. I'm becoming the version of myself who wants a great life, who says yes to certain things. And I want to have the support and I want to have the clarity. And I want to know that like, I 100% can do this and I'm going to do this. I'm going to become the version of myself, the highest version of myself. And I always think that that's so smart and so helpful for people to hear that like, learn from someone who took 3 years too long to do something. I would be 3 years ahead in what I'm doing and probably much more successful had I started 3 years ago. I do believe everything happens as it should. And, there's people who have been following me for years that have like just kind of followed my content. And then all of a sudden, after like 3 years, are like, okay, I'm ready. I'm deciding it's my turn. And that's wonderful and great. But I wish people could learn a little bit quicker. I think that that is like the one mistake that I have made for sure is that it took me too long. Someone else said, like, what's your why? Well, my why is that like I'm not okay settling in life. I'm not okay with people just like coasting in life. 90% of people, like I don't even know what the stats are, but I feel like 90% of people just like go about their day. And maybe this is you and like I'm not shitting on you, but I'm also like, "Oh my God, it could be so much better if you only fucking knew. If you only fucking knew how much better it could be. Like you wouldn't coast. You wouldn't just like take that 9 to 5, put a little bit of money behind, take that one vacation, do one thing, coast in that okay relationship, barely take care of yourself, feeling like Sunday's the worst day because you got to go back to work on Monday. Like we all know these people. And like to me, that's just so fucking sad. Like you were born worthy. You were put on this planet for a fucking reason. Why do we all take our life so like, why are we not valuing it as way it needs to be valued? There's a woman the other night, she and her husband go on like a golf cart ride and she's been we've seen her on the golf cart for years, like probably 3 or 4 years. She's not that old. She looks older than she probably is, but she's probably in her 60s. She's extremely overweight. And she always says to us, and this has been years, she always says to us, oh, it must be nice to get out on a walk every night. And I think to myself, I'm like, if you're that fucking miserable, you're overweight, you're not taking care of yourself, you're just like grouchy as fuck, you have every ability to get off that fucking golf cart and take care of yourself and live a life that you enjoy and do things for yourself. Like, I'm a big proponent of like, what the fuck are you doing? If you're unhealthy, if you're miserable, you have the power to change that. Only fucking you can change that. And like, I get angry about it because I feel like the version of myself at 27 was so unhappy that I'm like mad at like, for me, like, if you know this about me personally, I'm not a person who cries a ton, but I am a person who gets mad. Like, when I'm pushed into a corner, I will fucking get mad because that's like my emotional instinct. I actually, like, I'll cry eventually, but I get angry. And that's just like who I am. It's just like what I do. My dad gets angry, my mom cries. So I'm more like my dad in that regard. But I'm like, I just get so fucking mad because I'm like, you have literally been bitching for 4 fucking years. Get off the golf cart and fucking go for a walk and take care of yourself and find something that you enjoy. And like, I just don't have a ton of sympathy because I'm just like, you have the power. Like, you have the power to change whether you're miserable. You have the power to change whether you're going to take care of yourself. And a lot of this, guys, is the deep reprogramming. There's probably some story pattern or habit that this woman has. You know, she should really hire me. I could probably fucking help her. But all of that to be said, it's like, that's why I get so angry. That's my why. That's like the thing that is my deep why. I'm like, you have the power to change this. 99% of people listening to this podcast are not being held captive at gunpoint. Like, is it hard? Yes. Is it difficult? Yes. Are people, you know, do people like family don't get it? Do people around you don't get it? Will you feel lost, alone, and all the things? Yes, but it's so fucking worth it. Like, once you figure out that there's a way to yes for everything and that every excuse you have, I could probably give you the exact reason why you should probably do it. People say to me all the time, well, my husband's not going to support me. Well, maybe you should support yourself. I don't have the finances. Well, how are you going to do it if you don't do this? You know, I just don't know if I really want to work that hard. Well, do you really not want to work that hard, or do you want to be in the situation that you're in right now? Like, there's always like a counterintuitive for it. Like, every single time a person can find a way to no, I will help you find a way to yes. There is a way to yes for everything. And I think even just in the beginning of like just reprogramming, like the fact that you will always find a reason why you can't, one of the greatest things you can do is just reprogram how to find a way that you can. There's a way to can for every single thing in this world. You know, one of the questions said, how do I stay motivated and, you know, performing at a high level? To me, there's just no other option. There are some days that I just can't do it. There are some days that, like, in the combination of taking, you know, I do anywhere from like, I don't know, 3 to 7 client calls a day. There are some days at the end of the day, I am not motivated. There are some days at the end of the day that I just want to crash. You know, I probably have a few naps a year, but most days I just stay motivated, not because I'm motivated. It's just because I know that the highest version of myself will go for a walk. I will take care of myself. I will work out. I will keep promises to myself. I want to be the best version of myself. When I'm the best version of myself, I feel better about myself. And that's the reason why. That's how I stay motivated. I'm not motivated to do it. I don't want to go for a walk every day, but I know that the best version of me to take care of my clients, to take care of myself, to be there for my husband, my friends, my family, is to go for a walk and be the version of myself that is motivated, or not even motivated, that just does the things that are the best version of me. And so, like, I'm not always motivated, but I also think that you earn the ability to say no. I learned that a long time ago, is that I say yes to all of the things for anything that I'm in the beginning of starting because I want it to succeed. The more that you do it, like this podcast, the more that I've done this podcast, the more that I can say no to certain things. I can say no to certain opportunities. But in the beginning, I said yes to every opportunity because I earned the ability to say no. What do you do when you feel stuck or face setbacks? Good question. um, Feeling stuck, finding a way to yes. Like, what is the next thing that I can do? I'm a big proponent on thinking about the next action and not the 3 steps ahead. I'm always thinking about what is the next thing? What is the next thing? What is the next thing? Because in this industry and in this working with hundreds of clients over the last 7 years, I can tell you that most people stop themselves because they're thinking way too far ahead. When you think way too far ahead, that's when you get stuck. Sometimes you just have to think about the very, very next step, because then when you take that next step, you can then take that next step, then you can take that next step. I also feel like, too, when you're stuck, having coaching support is so, so helpful. Like when my clients are stuck, they know they have me no matter what, period. Whether I help them hold them emotionally, mentally, strategically, whatever it is, I think that there is such power in having that one person for you. I will tell you, there is so many of my clients, probably my most successful clients, who are the clients who come to me because they want to know that there is one fucking human being on the planet that is only for them, specifically for them, because they are that person for everyone else. And so they come to me in those moments when they're overwhelmed, exhausted, stuck, drained, fearful, all of those things. I take them and I hold them through that and we find the next step. And sometimes it's just supporting them. And then sometimes it's, the small kick in the butt, depending on what they need, because I know that that's why I'm there. I'm there to support them, but I'm also to hold them for the actual goals that they truly want. Because I think a lot of high performers, especially, are pulled in so many directions. And my job is to actually hold them for what they truly want when they're not in that sense of panic in that moment. What's the most rewarding part of my job? Oh my God, my clients 150%. I do talk a lot about like the financial success that a lot of my clients have, but I'll be honest with you, like that's just a byproduct of them figuring out, a lot of the personal stuff. It's hard to make a ton of money if you don't feel like you're worthy of it, or you don't feel like it's possible for you, or it's not something that you've been accustomed to or trained to, so a lot of those big financial moments come when they've already done the personal work. But also too, like, some of my biggest rewarding moments are when my clients have more time with their children, who are less stressed out, they're sleeping better, they're better in their relationships, they like themselves better. That's the stuff, that's the shiny stuff that people, it's so weird that so many of you will not pay for that, when that is truly, from the bottom of my soul, that is the most important thing on the planet, is being in a healthy relationship, taking care of yourself, loving yourself, being so grateful for where you're at. The other day, one of my membership clients, so like a coaching membership with me is like 1 call per month for a year. And you fill out this intake form so we can really concentrate on the call, like what we need to hit on. And this client wrote, "I am truly living my best life ever right now." And to me, and it's not like this client's making millions of dollars, but to me, there is nothing more rewarding than having a client come to me feeling stuck, overwhelmed, stressed out, and then like a few months later or a year later or years later say, "Oh my God, I am so fucking grateful for my life. And I'm so fucking grateful for what it's taken to get here." To me, that is the most rewarding thing on the planet. And I will say, personally, when I am overwhelmed and stressed out in my own personal life because of certain things that I can't control, I, number one, take care of myself. But number two, taking care of my clients is literally one of my greatest blessings on the planet, because it's like the people that I want to help and the people that I want to fix are the people that I can't, because they don't want to help themselves at this point. And so getting to help my clients is truly one of the greatest blessings of my life. Like, I know certain people say this, but I literally want every one of my clients to know, and I think that they do, that it is literally the greatest blessing of my life. Um, how do I balance my personal and my professional life? I have amazing boundaries. I prioritize the things that bring me the most amount of joy. Doing fun things, as my husband and I call it. I prioritize travel. I prioritize myself. I prioritize my mental health. I prioritize my physical health. If I did not take care of myself mentally and emotionally and physically, there's zero fucking chance on the planet that I could do this job, because holding upwards of 30 people's life and businesses is fucking hard. And I have to take care of myself, because if I don't, I can't do my job well. It's just end of story. Like, I just can't. So I have great boundaries. I take time off. I'm usually done my day by 3 o'clock, except for like one day a week. I only work like one weekend a week. And I know what brings me joy. I know what brings me happiness. I know where I have to have boundaries with certain people. I'm not perfect at it, but I do say, like, I can't control this. I can only control myself. So for me, I am so good at knowing what is important to me. I have learned to be so good to know what's important to me. And I would highly encourage you to do the exact same thing. Last question. And this comes from one of my coaching clients. What is a misconception that people have about coaching? And I would say the misconception is, in my personal opinion, that so many people do not understand why they would pay to have a coach. And to me, I just cannot fathom why anyone would not want to pay to have someone help them get clear, get confident, and actually accomplish the thing that they say they want to do. We have no problem as a society to spend thousands of dollars on a cell phone or a new purse or a vacation. I'll never forget it. This woman, I think she still follows me to this day. I remember her telling me that she could not invest in herself because she was saving to go on this vacation. And I'm a vacation girl. I get it. But I thought to myself, what an absolute travesty. You won't pay to fix what is a problem for 365 days a year, because for 1 week, you literally think this 1 week is going to solve what is your problem for 365 days a year. It was a very, very, and people do this all the time. It is that short-term thing that they think they want that is going to bring them the happiness, that is going to fix all their problems. You are going on a vacation for 7 days. When you get home, you have to come back to 358 days of reality. And to me, it is mind-blowing how someone will spend money on a vacation, on shoes, upgraded leather in their car, the new purse, the nice clothes. You're putting a fucking Band-Aid on the thing that you really need to fix. And when you fix that real thing, when you actually take care of the underlying things, it is so much fucking easier to do the vacation. It is so much fucking easier, because when I go on a vacation, I'm just as happy sitting at this desk as I am on the beach in Mexico. Fucking to my core, hand on the Bible, that is the honest to God truth. And it is so much easier for me to live a life where I can go on vacation, because I'm not hating my life or feeling stuck or overwhelmed or pissed off 358 days a year. Like, to me, it's just so crazy. But I also understand too that there is a lot of snake oil people out there. There's a lot of people that don't trust themselves. There's a lot of people that, not even if it's not even about the money. I had a person the other day tell me that, she would rather just go back to her therapist, and she's got plenty of money. She could 100% hire me, but she's like, well, I'm just going to go back and do my therapy thing. And I just don't want to really work on my business right now. And I was like, you've been doing it for years. Clearly it's not working. You're in the exact same spot. Like, I can't force a person to do something, but what you're doing is you're avoiding the thing that you know you need to do. A lot of people who end up working with me have been thinking about a thing for a very long period of time. And the only thing that they're doing once they actually commit to it is they're taking a different action. You know, sometimes people have to get in a worse spot to actually decide that they're ready to make a change. And that's sad to me, but also too, it's just the truth. Maybe you have to get broker. Maybe you have to get more miserable. Maybe you have to go further down in what you think about yourself. Maybe you have to go further down in your business. Maybe you have to go further down in your marriage, whatever it is. Maybe you have to have your kids hate you more in order for you to go, I have to do something different. And like sometimes that's just the case and that does suck, but also too, like sometimes that's just the situation. But I think the misconception is that, you know, you hire a coach and everything's going to change overnight. Not with me. I play the long-term game because I'm not here to give you a flash in the pan. I'm not here to help you make $10,000 in 10 days. I am here to change your life for the long term. I am here to get you to a point that you know for a fact you are living in alignment with what makes you happy, doing the thing on the planet that you want to do. You're good with who you are. You're good in your relationships. You actually enjoy your career. You actually enjoy your life. You're not living for a fucking Friday and miserable on a Sunday. You're not trying to hit the lottery and think that that's going to make your life better. You are truly actually in a spot where you're like, I am so fucking good that if nothing changes, I'm okay. And yet from that spot, oh my God, that's when everything gets better. Like that's what I want for all my clients. That's what I want for you. That's what I wanted for myself. That's why this whole podcast, why I did this podcast was just to tell you that like none of this shit that I've been doing is overnight. It's taken work, it's taken effort. But the greatest work, the greatest effort, I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years to get to this place. And I'll tell you with 100% honesty, it is the best money that you could ever spend because I have traveled. I have traveled in the most luxury fucking private plane. I've done it all. And I will tell you, none of that shit, none of it will make you happy if you're not fucking actually truly happy. If you're not actually fucking content with yourself. I guarantee you because I did it before I changed my life and I've done it after I've changed my life. And I will fucking tell you with 100% certainty, there's no question about it. Now it is a million times better. And I'm not telling you I don't want it. I'm not that person who's like, money doesn't make it. Bullshit. I love it. But let me fucking tell you, it does not fix everything because we both know that because there is really, really, really wealthy people who end their lives. There are really, really wealthy people who are fucking miserable to their core. So it has nothing to do with that and everything to do with figuring out that decision, happiness, contentment is an inside fucking job. And until you figure that shit out, it's going to be a tough road. Thank God I figured it out. And thank God I now get to help people figure it out. This is the reason why I do everything that I do. So if you have a misconception about me, if you think that like I've just married a rich guy and, my life is fucking perfect, well, that sucks for you to believe that because none of that is fucking true. I did a post the other day and it was kind of funny. One of my former clients and her husband commented on it and he's like, ain't that the fucking truth? Someone made a kind of a shitty comment to me about like, yeah, my life is good because of my husband. Yes, my husband's successful. I'm the first person to say I would have never picked the bum on the street. It's just not who I am. I want a great life. But I will also tell you, I don't do this because I have to. If you actually knew my life, and I said this on a post, if you actually knew my life, you would know I actually don't have to work as hard as I do. I do this because I am possessed, because it saved my life, because I love getting to see the results that my clients have. I'm not telling that I don't like the money that I make. I make great money and I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud that I started my business and for 2 years I didn't make fucking a dollar. And I'm so proud of myself for continuing to show up, continuing to do the thing. And now I make great money. But I actually don't have to do this as much as I do it. I do it because I truly believe I saved my life. And hopefully, even if I'm not saving my clients' lives, I'm hoping that I make their lives so much fucking better. And that ripple effect will change generations. So that's why I do what I do. And I just thought it would be helpful for you to hear, perhaps if you didn't know why I'm so passionate and why I get to be a psycho on this podcast and why I'm crazy on my social media. So I hope this podcast was informative, interesting, perhaps inspirational. If it is, I'd love for you to share it with someone. I'd love for you to give us a 5-star review over on Spotify or iTunes or anywhere you listen to the podcast. You can always send me a text message, 501-222-3362. It is 100% me. I reply. I'm so grateful for you guys. I hope that you took one thing out of this podcast. I hope that you took the knowing that you have the power to change your life and that life is so short and we are not meant to waste it. You are here for a purpose and a reason. So thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you guys so much. And don't ever forget, you have the power to decide it's your turn. I'll see you next week.